You are listening to Doug Thorpe's New Manager Forum. Sit back and enjoy this new message. Here's Doug.
Today I'm talking with Roger Ferguson. Roger is the creator of a pretty amazing program called the Big Five. We're going to talk about that in detail as we go through this segment. Roger, hello.
Hey, how are you this morning?
I'm very well, thank you, and thanks for joining us. Hey, so you have this program called Big Five. First, just real quick, tell us what Big Five is and why is it?
Okay, Big Five is a tool that has three primary functions. Number one, it serves as a really good time management tool for individuals outside of any corporate or team kind of effort or initiative. But the second level, it actually functions as a good project management tool. If you're a project team leader and need some way to organize and hold people accountable in that team, it's a good process. But here's the really cool part. Big Five at the corporate level can actually replace traditional annual employee appraisal, that process everyone dreads and hates so much. Big Five is a faster, better, more efficient way, an alternative, a creative alternative to traditional annual performance assessment.
Wow, that sounds like some sort of corporate blasphemy.
I hope so. That's my passion, Doug, is to change the way corporate America deals with employee performance appraisals. That's what I want on my tombstone. How's that?
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get into that in just a minute. So, where did Big Five come from?
Created Big Five actually when I was at JP Morgan Chase Bank. We were in a very stressful time. It's a long story, don't want to go into it too much, but I was in mortgage loan operations, and we basically grew from 5 people to 105 people in a period of about 30 days due to some government regulations change. And I was kind of lost in terms of talking to my manager, didn't know quite how to communicate what we were doing or where we were headed to my manager, who was just as busy as I was. And so Big Five was kind of my attempt to do monthly communication with my boss instead of waiting for the annual communication at year end to talk about how we're doing. So in a nutshell, that's how it came about. My boss liked it so much, he adopted it for the real estate operations area at Chase, and just about everywhere I've been with, Fluor or Chase, my managers have liked the process and adopted it, and it's kind of grown and gotten a little traction now. It's kind of fun as it starts to grow and develop and find more uses.
Just in real simple terms, tell us how Big Five works.
Okay, basically Big Five plays off processes that are already in place in most organizations. Most organizations, you either have a monthly production report that you complete somehow, or you're completing this verbally in a staff meeting. All staff meetings are kind of the same. What have you gotten done? What do you need to get done? And how can I help? That's kind of what people bring to that meeting. Well, all Big Five is committing those items and issues to paper in usually a half-page email. It can be done really quickly. Committing those actions or items to paper, and then fundamentally what you do is you have 12 monthly reports that, when stapled together, generally produce a much better picture of what the employees has contributed to the organization versus the old traditional, Doug is a great guy. He loves kittens and helps ladies across the street. And I give him a score of 3.8 on a 5-point scale, which is kind of what you get in a traditional annual appraisal. Big Five actually takes those 12 monthly reports and says, here's what the employee contributed. And there's an element also of how the managers coach the employee through that process. So Big Five, in its essence, the name Big Five comes from what you specifically ask employees to produce in this report. What you ask them to do by the 5th day of the month, which helps build it into the culture and helps people solidify and kind of assimilate the process. I guess it's due on the 5th business day fifth business day of the month or the first work day thereafter. But employees are required to submit two detailed items. Basically, number one, what are your 5 most significant accomplishments from last month? And number 2, what are your 5 highest priorities for the current month? And that fundamentally, like I said, provides a much more complete and realistic and meaningful report than what you tend to get with traditional appraisal. So 5 most significant accomplishments from last month, 5 highest priorities for this month. When those are combined, you got basically 120 data points at year end that says, here's what the employee contributed. It's a pretty good system, real simple, real elegant in terms of how it's done. And that's one of the reasons I think people like it.
Let's just recap again. So the first block is the 5 key accomplishments for the prior month. That's the employee telling the boss, hey, here's what I did. Woohoo, look at me. This is what I got done. And then the second set is the 5 goals or targets for the next month, basically.
Yeah, it's real interesting, the nomenclature, the actual words that you use. When we talk about goals, we tend to think in terms of annual goals and lofty, ethereal kind of things that may or may not occur. As a matter of fact, one of the challenges with traditional performance appraisal is, everyone's seeking strategic alignment. Everyone talks about having everyone in the company understand the company, where it's going and how we get there. I know in my last organization, we had a goal of, expand our presence in the North Sea. If I'm the HR guy sitting in Texas, I'm not exactly sure how I know how my daily actions contribute to expanding our presence in the North Sea. That's just one of the issues, one of the problems. Big 5 is more effective than annual goal setting because it is more tactical. I intentionally never use the word goals. A corporation or an organization can certainly have goals, but what's meaningful to the employee is the tactical steps that they need to take month to month to help push the company toward those goals. So goals are important, but Big 5 helps translate those goals into tactical actions that the employee can take monthly to help push that goal forward. So I intentionally avoid the word goals, and I focus on priorities and accomplishments. Seems to be more effective.
Well, that would make sense at the employee level. You call it priorities. The employee is raising their hand saying, all right, boss, here's my priority for the next month. So laying that down in that half-page report, managers got a shot at looking at it and saying, now we're off the mark. I don't want to do number 3, push that out. Let's do something else, right?
That's exactly how it works. That's exactly how it works. By 5 days, once again, trying to hit the 5, after 5 days of receipt of that employee's report, the manager's job is to provide feedback to that employee, also through email. And if the employee has provided those 10 things, by the way, there's nothing magic about 5 and 5, but generally over the years, those have proven to be good, effective numbers. 5 priorities and 5 accomplishments tend to tell the story. But the manager's job is to pick and choose which of those issues he or she needs to respond to. And all of this is done in bullet points, short responses, lengthy narratives, or, we don't want lengthy narrative. We don't want a 3-page report. All of this, we've proven, can be done in about a half-page email report where the manager responds to guide, coach, and correct the employee. Now, one important thing, this does not take the place of face-to-face coaching. Many times, the Big 5 report that the employee submits to the manager will be an immediate call to action for the manager to sit with that employee. Something's wrong. You're very strategically unaligned. You're very off target on the negative side. Or this employee's really done something amazing that needs to be shared with the rest of the organization on the positive side. And the manager needs to go get with that person to praise, confirm, reinforce that behavior. Now, this is not annual appraisal done 12 times, done monthly. This is nimble, quick, concise communication. What it typically might look like is my big five for this month. I might say that one of my most significant accomplishments is completing an interview with Doug Thorpe. That's it. Completing an interview with Doug Thorpe. That's 6 words, and I'm done. That's how quick it is. My boss or accountability partner, since I don't have a boss right now in my consulting firm, I'm the boss. But if I had an accountability partner, their response or the manager's response might be, nice, go get them. Or a question. How do you plan to use that interview, that video in your marketing efforts? So I might, as a boss, pose a question to an employee, provide reinforcement or a change of direction, or I might have to say, see me, we got to talk. But this is not designed to be annual appraisal done 12 times where you go back and forth and agree or disagree, and another level manager has to approve. This is ongoing coaching that actually continues from month to month. So one employee email, one manager response, you're done for the month.
Okay. So what about the work team that has workload that is, I'm going to call it large incremental, for lack of a better word. And what I mean by that is, so there's a task that is going to take more than 30 days to get finished, but I'm an employee. I've got, if you were to plot out my day, roughly, let's pick a number, 30% of my assignment is to work on that longer term project. And so now it's the 5th of the month. I'm going to turn in my report. How do I address my contribution to that piece, that bigger project? It's not over in a month. I haven't completed it.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
By just reporting what you have gotten done tactically, once again, toward the completion of that strategic objective. So, a lot of annual processes and softwares include a little progress bar that you can actually note, I've gotten 30, 50, 75% of this thing done.
Mm-hmm.
We don't include any progress bars in our process, but the employee can certainly say, toward the accomplishment of this, let's say it's a 6-month goal, here's what I got done in moving toward achieving that goal. That also gives the manager kind of a nice update, same kind of update I said before that he or she would typically get in a staff meeting. Where are you? We got this big deadline 6 months down the road. How much have you done? Where are you? The employee simply reports that progress in real narrative terms. Here's what I've done. Here's where I am. Here's where I might need help. Anything that's not completed in a month, that's one of the other cool things is Big Five helps create accountability, because anything that's not completed doesn't drop off the list. It stays on the list. It can't just, I don't know about you, but in my years of experience, I've both had it happen to me with employees as well as it's happened to me personally. Why did you get to year end and you say, why did we have this goal? We didn't do it, but no one seems to care because priorities changed, regulations changed, technology changed, management changed. The manager who wanted this, our boss, is now gone. He's been promoted and gone, and no one cares about it anymore. I know that's a pretty simplistic example, but that kind of thing happens all the time where you get to year end and that goal is no longer valid or meaningful. By doing this monthly, you make those adjustments on the fly and can keep your organization better on track.
Absolutely. And those kind of changes are very real. As we sit here and talk about them, it sounds kind of simplistic, but like you said, something like a management change, goals and priorities change. The new guy thinks he has a mission to re-steer the group and go another direction. And all that prior work effort either gets reframed or totally abandoned.
Yeah,
and
happens all the time.
Hard to capture in an annual review if I'm the soldier that's been down in the trenches the whole time.
Yeah, it's real interesting too, Doug. If you look at the performance appraisal industry, the big software providers and the big HR vendors that are pushing this stuff, most people are pushing toward what's called monthly check-ins with their employees.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're doing is just pushing this, people today, millennials, Gen X, whatever you want to call them, people today are much more technology savvy, of course, and want instant feedback versus that year-end stuff. And so more and more of these vendors are pushing for what they're calling monthly check-ins with employees, which is always a great idea. What they're basically saying is you need to communicate more frequently and more meaningfully with your employees, and who can argue that? Where they fall short is they don't eliminate this year-end process. The very coolest thing about Big Five performance appraisal is that the year-end meeting, the year-end take me to the woodshed and give me my beating kind of, you've told me 5 things I've done well. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop to tell me that meeting, that annual meeting goes totally away. There's absolutely no reason for that meeting. And that's a totally different mindset than what the HR and the corporate world has today. An employee who says, hey, I'd like to be reviewed under Big Five, the employee and manager can go back and pull as many past monthly Big Fives. Doesn't have to be 12. It could be the last 4. It could be the last 16, whatever works in that organization. They go pull those and look at them and say, here's my feedback. I'm your boss. Here's my feedback on how you're doing. If the organization needs to review a certain number of past Big Five reports to be able to make a promotion decision, a pay decision, any of that kind of thing, they can do it by just pulling whatever number of past reports they want. That annual meeting goes totally away. And that's the biggest piece of this is, people, the statistics are overwhelmingly negative for people not liking performance appraisal, primarily because it does. It feels like being taken to the woodshed sometimes. It's a very unnatural process. And Big Five tends to work real well because it's more like daily coaching and communication with your manager versus that year-end dreaded kind of meeting that you've got to have.
That sounds great, Roger. We're talking with Roger Ferguson, the creator and developer of the Big Five Performance Assessment Program. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back after this message.
Hi guys, Doug Thorpe here. I want to tell you about my new book, The Uncommon Commodity. I call it the Common Sense Guide for New Managers. I wrote this thing with the intent of helping new first-time managers really make a difference right where they are. Most of the time you get thrown into that job, you're not used to being in management, and boy is it different when you're not the doer anymore, but now you're the leader of the team. It's no longer about you, but it's about them. Hey, this book has been on the shelf since July. A lot of seasoned managers are reading it and they're going, wow, I either forgot that or I need to remember that or I need to learn that. So it really hits a broader audience. I want to encourage you to take a look. Again, it's called The Uncommon Commodity, and it's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Nook, and on iBooks. Now, back to our show.
All right, everybody, we're back. Today I'm talking with Roger Ferguson. He's the creator and developer of Big Five. Roger, hello again.
Hey.
We talked about the structure and the purpose of Big Five in the first half. Let's talk a little bit more about the benefits. Why would a company want to embrace this and bring it in?
Okay. Well, surprisingly enough, I've identified 5 benefits.
I have a gratuitous plug there.
I know that sounds silly, but I'll go straight to benefit number 5. People tend to like this process a little better. And the fact that we do everything in 5s, and I jokingly talk about 5s over and over again, really ingrains us in the culture. The 5th benefit, working backwards, is people like this a lot better than traditional performance appraisal. You'll hear, it energizes the workplace. You'll hear people in their cubicles stand up and go, whoa, got another, kind of a ring the bell ceremony, when you're in sales, when you got another sale, when you close a deal, you ring the bell. This is kind of that, wow, got another one of my Big Five down. Another minor benefit is a lot of people post their Big Five on whiteboards in their office or cubicles or on pieces of paper, and other people see them and can help them achieve their goals. It tends to help communication and because everyone tends to know what everyone else is working on within reason. It's not a magic cure-all, of course, but it does tend to help that. The other thing under that same guise of people liking it, I think people like taking credit for their own work. You know, in a lot of employee satisfaction surveys, you hear people say, "I'm not really sure that my manager knows what I'm doing, or what my contributions are." This kind of helps with that and takes place. If your organization is already producing some kind of monthly production report, you can customize and fit Big Five right into that existing process. So not only did you eliminate the annual appraisal meeting, but you are really not creating a separate step. You're incorporating performance management into production management, which helps you as a manager run the business a little better. The other 4 benefits, just running them real quickly. Obviously, there's better and more effective communication if you do it monthly instead of annually. We always assume that this annual performance meeting is tough on the employee. It's also tough on the manager. The manager, I don't know about you, but sometimes I lay awake at sleep at night saying, okay, I've got to deliver some tough news to this employee, but I know how they're going to take it, and it's not going to be fun, and it's going to be this like. The informal nature of Big Five, being able to provide this coaching monthly, everyone tends to relax. The employee relaxes because they know everyone in the company is getting the same kind of feedback every month on their report. The manager relaxes because this looks a lot more like coaching and help and assistance than it does criticism and documentation to get the employee out the door. So that, for that reason, it works really well. It's also totally customizable. If something's important in your organization, I mean, we were doing this in email. We've got a software that we're just about ready to roll out, which I can talk more about later. But you know, you can do this as simply as just providing an email traffic back and forth in this thing. So it improves communication. We said employees tend to like it. It also improves accountability and company performance. It helps the organization gain traction and actually move forward in accomplishing their goals. The last installation we did, the COO put it very nicely when he said, I get to spend more time actually accomplishing work than documenting work, which I thought was pretty cool. It takes less time than traditional annual appraisal. There's not a lot of data out there on how much time managers currently spend on performance appraisal, but the data that's out there is pretty telling. Many managers are spending somewhere between 200 and 400 hours a year and involved in some sort of element or aspect of the traditional performance appraisal. I mean, 10 weeks a year. And that would be okay if the process were meaningful. But you ask people, and in survey after survey, it's shown that people don't believe that this process has merit. They don't believe that that it really helps employees. They see it as it's a compliance exercise for HR to be able to document the difference in pay between Bob and Sally. And Big Five can still accomplish that and get that done. And then finally, for organizations that are concerned, I know at my last corporate or my last Fortune 500 assignment, we had a separate coaching initiative going on to help managers become better coaches and document their coaching. Big Five actually creates coaching. I mean, it's creating at least 10 data points per month where the employee said, here's what I've done, here's what I plan on doing, and the manager gets to come back and say, yes, sick 'em, go forward, or hold the phone, I'm not sure, or absolutely not, don't go that direction. We're not aligned. So this effort actually creates coaching as well. So those 5 reasons, I mean, better communication between the employee and the manager, it improves actual corporate performance and accountability, takes much less time than traditional appraisal, creates coaching, and people tend to like it.
You know, I know, talking about the time spent by managers, I recall in my own life a situation where one of the sharpest, most intelligent executives I'd ever worked for. He was pretty inspiring that way in terms of his technical ability to create amazing solutions. He was a good guy to work for, personable in meetings and such, but he had a thing about needing to do the annual assessment, and he didn't do it. That was his choice. And I worked for the guy for 6 years and never got an annual review. Now, I don't know how we did that corporately, because the corporate function as I knew it in HR was pretty robust, and they were worried about their compliance metrics and analysis. So how they got away with this guy never doing a review. And I was among a group of, I think there were about 6 of us that were direct reports to this guy. We all suffered the same malady. When it came annual review time, we just walked in and said, "What's our raise?" And we didn't even ask.
Yeah.
Here,
I've had a couple of them done in the parking lot on the way to the car. So what are managers telling us when they do that? They're telling us that they don't believe there's value in the process. They're telling us that the juice is not worth the squeeze. And an HR guy, I've been one all my life. And what we tend to say is, this traditional annual appraisal will work if managers will just take it seriously. But managers have been telling us for years now that this is not a valuable process for them. It's compliance only. And the good news is that Big Five actually helps them become better managers, helps them create accountability in the organization.
Let's talk about the compliance aspect of this. I think a lot of business leaders believe that annual review is a legal requirement.
Annual review is not a legal requirement, which makes the entire effort even more egregious in my mind. I mean, look at what HR departments tend to put managers through, for lack of better terminology. Probably the 2 largest loads that the typical manager has to carry is employment. When you want to hire someone, there's an extreme process you have to go through to get approval, to get the job posted with the Workforce Commission in your state, wherever you are. All those things you have to get done. Those are legally mandated. You got to do those. That's not your HR department creating work for you. It's got to be done so that we have fair employment standards in the country. The government has said nothing about performance appraisal and what has to be done. The only thing that's occurred, and has occurred more recently, is fair pay issues, of course, under the current administration, and I think that will continue. It needs to continue. If you're paying people less than someone else because of their gender, that's just silly and makes no sense at all. So that needs to be corrected. But other than that, other than being able to document performance to show why Bob makes more than Sally, or Sally makes more than Bob, or Ted makes more than Bob, that's it. And the good news is Big Five works very well. I mean, what, as an attorney or as an HR or business leader, what would you rather see? Doug is a great guy, very flexible, always gives 110%. I really like working with him. I give him a 3.8 on a 4-point scale, or 120 data points that says the reason Doug makes more than Roger is bam. Look at his contributions. Look at these 120 data points over the last 12 months that show us Doug's contribution versus Roger's. So Big Five works very well, and by the way, has been already tested legally in one client shop and passed with flying colors. So all of those HR worries about, do we have our documentation in place that'll protect us legally, Big Five actually does a better job than traditional appraisal. Many times traditional annual appraisal creates liability. A person gets terminated for poor performance. They file unlawful termination. They come into an arbitrator or even to court. And what do they bring? They bring 7 years worth of performance appraisals that generally are kind of soft. They say this employee was at least good, and sometimes it may be even better than good. If you talk to labor attorneys, I think they'll tell you that most of the time, traditional annual appraisal documentation at least does as much harm as it does good, depending on how well the manager has documented the employee's performance. So Big Five helps with that issue as well. I'm a fan.
I would guess so. Let's talk about the places where this has been installed and share with our group here some of the outcomes and benefits that you've seen in real life fire.
Okay. Well, our last installation is probably a good one to talk about with a trade association that's basically engineering based. You know, you might think that some of this stuff is soft and kumbaya and it's people skills and all this. This installation was primarily engineers or people who deal with engineers as clients. And this installation, they've been using Big Five for about 9 months now. We just did, when we install Big Five, what we like to do is do a pre-installation survey to see how people feel about the old process. And then we do a post-installation survey to compare the delta and hopefully show people, you know, how they've improved their process and more importantly, improve the return on investment for this process, since it takes so much time, effort, and money to get this going. And so our last installation, we just did the post Big Five installation survey, and the numbers, I read them off the board here. As a result of Big Five in this organization, the frequency of coaching has increased 38%. 95% of the employees said that they felt like the frequency of coaching was where it needed to be, or they wanted a little more. Coaching has increased by 38%, but employees hate it. They don't hate it. They like it. They like the feedback. 70% of the people surveyed said that Big Five takes the same amount of time or less time than annual appraisal. And 38% said there had been a dramatic improvement in manager and employee communication. The big statistic, the biggest one, we asked them their overall opinion of the traditional annual appraisal process. And the bottom line is that only 7% of the employees identified that process as great or truly effective. I think what we gave them choices is that said, great, I like knowing where I stand with my manager. It's okay, I don't like everything about it, but I do benefit from it. And then the third choice was, I only participate because I'm required to do so. On the positive side, that number that was 7% after Big Five jumped to 58%. So over a 50% increase in people who were happy with the process. If you go to the negative side, in the original survey, 37% of the people there said that they only participated because they were required to do so. After Big Five, that number dropped to 4%.
Well,
so the data is very favorable for Big Five and shows that it works. And I think we have all of those concerns that HR professionals might have. I think we've got those covered as well.
let's talk about the employee that might be struggling a little bit in the organization. While I'm a big advocate of trying to be proactive, and I would like to think that I've done a pretty good job over the years, but I certainly coach people to do a better job of this, meaning if you've got that employee that's struggling a little bit, not demonstrating a good working knowledge of the task, the coaching needs to be sooner than 30 days even. You need to try to address that head on as things are revealed. But in respect to posting in Big Five, what's your recommendation to people on dealing with those kinds of employees?
Well, if I understand your scenario properly, you need to move this employee up or you need to move this employee out, right? They got to improve their performance or you're going to want them to bless you by going to work for one of your competitors, right? Big Five, I think, plays a big role in that initially as you start to coach that employee. Let's say it's for something you said they weren't able to perform the basic task. So let's talk about errors. Let's talk about you had some way to actually account for how many errors this employee was making on a monthly basis. I think you write that right into Big Five as an improvement need for the employee. This month, you need to work on your accuracy and completion You could actually give a couple of short examples if you wanted to. But this would assume, this doesn't replace face-to-face coaching. Like you said, this needs to happen sooner even than the 30 days. A Big Five can serve as a great place to be able to document what your expectations are for the employee. Now, if you move to corrective action, where it's obvious, where you're no longer coaching, you really are documenting to try to get this employee out the door. I think Big Five can help you in terms of the months prior that you've gotten to that point. But I advise most of my clients, particularly those who have proven corrective action processes, to keep it separate from Big Five. So if you're going to create a performance improvement plan, a PIP, a lot of companies call them PIPs, performance improvement plan, any kind of, 3-step warning process before you terminate the employee, I'm going to advise you to keep that process in place and take that out of Big Five. Keep that in place. It seems to be the best way to make that work.
Well, that makes sense because that PIP has its own timeline. Once you pull the trigger on it, it's going to have its own timeline, whatever company policy is on that. 30-day warning, 60-day warning, 90-day probation, whatever the terms and conditions may be.
Yeah. So I think it works well to draw a pretty clear line of distinction. The Big Five is about coaching. And once you've reached a point where you feel like this employee is not going to be salvageable and you've got to start official documentation with HR about this, I think you move it to corrective action.
Okay. Shifting gears, you have written a book. So tell us about that.
Well, the book is called Finally, Performance Assessment That Works. A lot of what's written out there today is about the problems with traditional performance appraisal, but most of the solutions are, like I said earlier, meet with the employee more regularly and then automate the current old process. And the book, Finally, Performance Assessment That Works, basically presents a guideline, a roadmap for you to totally dump that line of thinking and move to this more progressive and more creative and less expensive and more effective alternative, I think. So the book's available on Amazon and Kindle. I'm available and have a virtual team of people that's available to help you with your installation and can help you avoid some of the pitfalls, I think, that we have found, some of our clients have found, exploring this a little more. Thinking about using, a consultant to install this, or thinking about doing it as a self-installation. I'd be happy to talk to you. One of the things that we're about to do is we're about to release our software, which will fundamentally, answer all the questions that HR people might have about how do you document, track, and store this data for future reference. All the allusions I've made so far have been to email. And how do you actually track that email and make sure everyone's participating and the documentation is actually created and there for your use. And it's tough if you use an email. You could create a document, a template, house it in SharePoint if you're using SharePoint. But this software will basically be as, I like to, it's going to be as simple and elegant as the Big Five process itself, allowing employees to be able to use, it's an app basically, so employees can do it from any Android or smart device or at their office computer, be able to submit their Big Five. Managers can do the same in terms of their responses, and it'll be simple, quick, elegant, and very affordable, especially compared to the cost of some of these more pricey and more elaborate systems that are on the market today.
It'll be exciting to see that out. We're going to put links up here on the screen for Roger's firm. It is ISI HR Consulting, and that's at isihrconsulting.com. You'll see the banner on the page here directing you there. Roger is, as he said, he's available to coach and consult for implementation of this if you're interested. I'm going to be having a whole lot more discussion on my blog in the coming weeks about this process, because I, like Roger, believe that as a manager, one of the toughest things is providing that coaching to your employees and having it mean something. And I'm count me into one of those managers that's hated the annual review process. I've always complied. My HR friends, wherever you are, I've always complied, as you know, but it's not saying I like the process at all. And I was one of the first to say, is this really going to mean something? So that in and of itself was a driver for me to try to be motivated to do a little more coaching along the way, not let the annual review have such a significant impact, take away the significance of it and make it a true compliance event. It made a lot more sense to me. So Roger, I want to thank you for sharing this with everybody. We'll also share some links on how to get the book. You're on Amazon and Kindle, I believe. Is that right?
Thank you.
Any departing words for the audience here, Roger?
Just one, I think, Doug. Rarely do we get the chance as managers or HR leaders to be able to make significant impacts in our organization. You know, that incremental jump or leap in process improvement that we all talk about. This is your chance. This is your chance to take a tired, old, worn out, hated process and become a hero in your organization by introducing this new process. And I'd be happy to help you do that in any way I can. So thank you for your time.
Very good. We've been talking to Roger Ferguson, the creator of the Big Five Performance Assessment Model. Thank you for your time. We're going to see you in the next episode.
You have been listening to Doug Thorpe's New Manager Forum. Visit our website at dougthorpe.com. Leave a comment or ask a question. We'll see you in the next episode.